Greetings. From Stonehenge and Silbury Hill, from the headwaters of the Nile to the Great Pyramid at Giza, from the ruins at Angkor Wat to those at Mazatlan, from the very outer world to the inner collective mind, we welcome you to Caravan to Midnight, the John B. Wells program. Behold the new mothership, and welcome aboard. Our however many years we may have left mission is to bring you information that you may hear somewhere else, but it's not likely. And on this particular episode, we will speak with Gerald Celente, whom I affectionately refer to as Signore Celente Gcelente, and we will speak with him about a variety of subjects as we foray into the electromagnetic sea of waves. We probably won't talk about Ebola. I mean, seriously, what is the point when you can't get a straight answer out of the CDC or the White House or any of the people who are supposed to be in charge? I mean, why bother? Okay, I will. You know that app I told you about? I told you about the Ebola project. You can download it from iTunes. As a matter of fact, you can download the Caravan to Midnight app at iTunes too, but I digress just slightly. Well, the last time that I pulled it up, and in fact I think I will pull it up right now to just go to my point. Let's see what it is. Here we are. Let's see. Let's go to the home page and let's look at information. Well, right here at number 2, under definition, which is an infectious and generally fatal disease marked by fever and severe internal bleeding spread through ... and then you have to tap it to get more. The second one is risk of exposure, and this is what it says. I mean, I rebooted this. You know, you do the double click on the little toggle and then, you know, start shoving programs that you've used up. Reboot, here we go. Right here it says, all cases of human illness or death have occurred in Africa. No cases have been reported in the United States. This app is put out by the CDC. Useless, okay? Now, here's some good stuff for you. Seriously good stuff. A Spanish nurse has contracted the disease, and in fact, Spain reports first Ebola transmission outside Africa. Unbelievable. Now, there was something on Israel Radio News. I didn't believe it, but somebody close to us said, the Ebola patient in Dallas has died. As a matter of fact, we're thinking about changing it. I'm thinking about changing this, the nickname for the city from the Big D to the Big E. What do you think? Anyway, no, that's not going to work. But anyway, the story was supposed to be that the Ebola patient had died. But then the story went away. But a screenshot was taken, so I know that it was posted there at one time. So the information is just not, folks, it's just not that reliable at this point. It really, really isn't. And there's too much of this. I mean, seriously, with a disease like Ebola, you would think that maybe the political correctness could like take a back seat to actually containing the disease and, well, protecting the rest of the planet, but no. This is from Human Rights Watch. And listen, I'm not insensitive to human rights. I think we need those. I think there are some human rights, like you have the right to be born and you have the right to die, and in between those points, I think it's pretty much up to you, or whatever government you can come up with. West African governments should ensure rights protections as a crucial element in controlling the unprecedented Ebola epidemic ravaging the region, Human Rights Watch said today. Human Rights Watch expressed its sympathy to the families, friends, and colleagues of those who have died as a result of the Ebola outbreak and recognized the courage of many health workers and others in caring for the sick. Governments, the article goes on, in Ebola-affected countries should better protect health workers from infection limit use of quarantines, address the gender dimensions of the outbreak, ensure security forces responding to the crisis respect basic rights, and facilitate independent monitoring of emergency measures and donations. Human Rights Watch said, donor governments, through international assistance and cooperation, should help these governments fulfill the right to health, mark that, and efforts to address the epidemic's broader impact. Quote, given the tragic magnitude of this epidemic, the affected governments cannot and should not be expected to fulfill the right to health on their own, said Corinne Dufka, senior researcher at Human Rights Watch. Continuing the quote, the international community must help assume this responsibility, while insisting that governments do their part by ensuring transparency and respect for human rights as they respond to the crisis. As of September 5, 2014, there have been 4,784 confirmed or suspected cases of Ebola virus and more than 2,400 deaths across most regions of Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, and in 2 cities in Nigeria. Cases were confirmed in 7 of 8 regions in Guinea, 10 out of 15 counties in Liberia, 13 of 14 districts in Sierra Leone, as well as in the Senegalese capital Dakar and the Nigerian cities of Lagos and Port Harcourt. Among the dead are over 140 healthcare workers. Doctors Without Borders, the World Health Organization, and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, among other organizations, have repeatedly warned that the outbreak is spiraling out of control. A WHO statement on September 8th said the number of new cases is increasing exponentially. Ebola treatment centers are overflowing and turning highly infectious patients away. Meantime, over here in good old USA, the CDC argues against shutting down air travel from Africa to stop Ebola. Yep. Now this is from not Human Rights Watch. It's reposted on InfoWars. It's a Kurt Nemo article. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said Friday shutting down travel from West Africa to stem the spread of Ebola will put more Americans at risk. The director of the federal agency, Tom Frieden, said restricting air travel from Liberia and other countries where the disease is rapidly spreading will be ineffective and prevent officialdom from doing its job. Quote, the only way we're going to get zero risk is by stopping the outbreak at the source in West Africa, Frieden told, who else? MSNBC. He added that the right of return is more important than preventing the disease from spreading. That's the most important part of this article. Frieden, the director of the CDC, says the right of return is more important than preventing the disease from spreading. Here's the quote. Even if we tried to close the border, it wouldn't work. People have a right to return. People transiting through could come in, and it would backfire. Because by isolating these countries, it'll make it harder to help them. It will spread more there, and we'd be more likely to be exposed here. Now, would someone explain to me the logic or maybe even the intelligence of such a statement? Because I am either a very stupid man or I don't understand how containing the virus over here is going to make it harder for us to control the virus over there. Or is it control the virus over there and it makes it harder to control the virus over here? It's just stupid. Anyway, on Friday, journalist and author Jerome Corsi cited a study published in a scientific journal a month ago predicting the virus would reach the United States by the end of September. Well, it did. The scientists said that in order to effectively combat the deadly virus, air travel in West Africa would need to be shut down and a quarantine imposed. They said only interventions on the ground will prevent Ebola from spreading internationally. Quote, the current analysis shows that if the West African outbreak is not contained, the probability of international spread is going to increase consistently, especially if other countries are affected and not able to contain the epidemic. Okay, now, This is from the Associated Press. Again, I'm not going to talk about Ebola with Gerald Celente because he's not an epidemiologist, so we're going to talk about other things. But it's always great to talk with Gerald. He's just such a cool guy, and he's so level-headed, and he is a true patriot. He loves this country, as do I. Madrid. In what is the first reported incident of Ebola transmission outside of Africa, a Spanish nurse who treated a missionary for the disease at a Madrid hospital tested positive for the disease, Spain's health minister said, today. The female nurse was part of the medical team that treated a 69-year-old Spanish priest who died in hospital last month after being flown back from Sierra Leone, where he was posted. Health Minister Ana Mato said. The woman went to the Alcorcon hospital in the Madrid suburbs with a fever and was placed in isolation. Mato said the infection was confirmed by 2 tests and that the nurse was admitted to a hospital on Sunday. Her only symptom was a fever. Antonio Alemany, Madrid Center of Primary Health Care, told a news conference, authorities are drawing up a list of people the nurse had contact with. So that's not good. That's not good. Oh, as long as we're hanging crepe, let's hang a little more, shall we? This is from thelocal.no. That's Norway. Almost 30 years after the nuclear plant explosion at Chernobyl, this autumn, more radioactivity has been measured in Norwegian grazing animals than has been noted in many years. A scientist at the Norwegian Radiation Protection Authority said, this year is extreme. In September, 8,200 becquerel per kilo of the radioactive substance cesium-137 was measured in reindeer from Vaga Rheinlag AS. That's in central Norway. In comparison, the highest amount at the same place was 1,500 becquerel among the reindeer in September 2012. The research also measured radioactivity in Norwegian sheep this year. Both in southwest Norway and in southeast Norway, 4,500 becquerel per kilo meat from sheep was measured at most. 600 becquerel per kilo is the safe limit allowed for sheep meat to be sold for human consumption, 600. The radiation protection scientist is quite certain about the cause. He said, this year there has been extreme amounts of mushroom. In addition, the mushroom season has lasted for a long time, and the mushroom has grown very high up on the mountains. Especially the gypsy mushroom, it's been a problem. This is a good food mushroom for both people and animals, but it has one bad trait. It can absorb a lot of radioactivity. Unbelievable. Let's hang some more crepe, shall we? DHS chatter, suspected terrorists planning to infect themselves with Ebola. That's from the Sierra Hotel Tango Foxtrot Plan.com. I tell you. DHS insider, terrorist self-infect with Ebola. There are 250 million Muslims in sub-Saharan Africa. That is 1/5 of the entire world's population of Muslims. And radical Islam is spreading quickly through those countries. In fact, Nigeria, with 60 million Muslims, has already adopted Sharia law through many of its northern states. What this means is that we have a very large population of Muslims who will continue the trend of radicalization and hatred toward the Western world. Okay, so then what? Well, Ebola is not contained. In fact, air travel is still relatively unrestricted in the hot countries. Take Ebola patient 0 in the U.S. He traveled freely from Liberia to the U.S. since the incubation period of the virus is up to 21 days. Mark that, up to 21 days, not on the 21st day you have symptoms. It may take up to 21 days. People can appear healthy and board planes in these countries. And last but not least, terrorists are willing to give up their own lives to kill others in the name of Allah. To a normal person, the thought of self-infliction with Ebola sounds mad. However, for a terrorist, it means glory in the name of Allah. So let's put this threat together and see if it's credible. We have several Muslim-dense countries within Africa, and radical Islam is spreading quickly through the region. Number 2, it just so happens that many of these countries are out of control with Ebola infections. Number 3, many unconfirmed terrorists have visas which allow them to travel freely from these countries into the U.S., and there is little restriction in these countries in terms of inbound and outbound flights. Number 4, terrorists are willing to kill themselves in the name of jihad. It seems very credible to me, writes the author, that a terrorist would self-inflict themselves by finding individuals infected with Ebola, thereby weaponizing themselves. So long as they are not on the terrorist watch list, they can board a plane and make their way to the U.S. From there, they can wait until they get symptoms and start purposely infecting others in highly populated areas. Why would they want to put themselves through that agony, though? Well, perhaps some can deal with the pain until death, but perhaps some of them will commit suicide when the symptoms become unbearable or they are no longer mobile. Will this threat really manifest? With Black Friday shopping and the Christmas season coming up, it seems very easy to find densely populated areas to infect. However, any major city can be a target at any point in time. To see the future and understand how the issues and events of today will determine the trends of tomorrow. Gerald, did you coin that term, the trend is your friend, or did I steal it from you?
No, actually, that's an old Wall Street term.
Is it?
It goes way, way back in the sense that, you know, if the market's moving forward or the market's moving down, you just go with where it's going. So that's their quote.
Okay, so I did steal it. Good, excellent. Well, they've stolen from us. I'd say a little quid pro quo is appropriate at this point. Well, and now, I heard a rumor that this whole ISIS thing is actually a covert operation against Italians. Is there any truth to that?
It's totally true. They've gotten everybody riled up about this. It's a plot to destroy the Italian ISIS business. Who's going to buy an Italian ISIS? I sell Italian ISIS, you're dead on both ends. So this is a plot to kill the Italian ISIS business. And on the other hand, by the way, propaganda for all you entrepreneurs out there, that's the business to get into. You can do it cheaply and you can bring in great results, because ISIS is the greatest propaganda movement that I've seen in my 35 years of trend forecasting. Check it out, Mr. Wells.
I will do, as you say.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go. You ready?
Oh, absolutely. So
they cut off the heads of 2 guys. Oh boy, those evil ISIS. You saw them. They cut off the heads of 2 white guys that were over in a foreign country that things were really shaky. They killed over 200,000 people there, and they got about 5 million that have left the country because it's in such bad shape. But they cut off their heads anyway, and they were white guys. How many people did America and its coalition of the willing kill since they launched the Afghan and Iraq wars over 13 years ago? 1.5 million. Oh, yeah. But they bombed them. So they used some depleted uranium and white phosphorus, but they didn't behead them. Hey, what happened last month over there in Gaza? It's only 2,100 people, most of them civilians. They blew them apart, but they didn't behead them. Hey, how many people did America's great ally, those Saudis? They only beheaded 22 people in August, but they deserved it. They were drug dealers. Some of the people committed adultery. Oh, and sorcery. Hey, anybody that's doing sorcery, I say chop their head off.
Right.
Everybody's bought the ISIS baloney. They bought it to the extent where 73% of the American people are now in favor of bombs away over Syria, because if we don't get them ISIS over there, before you know it, they're going to be in Topeka. They'll be in Allentown, Pennsylvania. They'll be in Ferguson, Missouri. That's open season for ISIS. They'll be everywhere. People bought the cheapest line from the commander-in-chief that I've ever seen since they bought the Afghan war. So what I'm saying is propaganda is the good business to get into. You can do it cheaply, and boy, you get big results from it.
So we should open, hello, Wells and Celente propaganda. Who can we con for you?
As a matter of fact, we should teach a college course in it, because these kids that are going deep in debt when they get out of college become indentured servants on the average of about $35,000. So imagine being 22 and having a degree in, how about gender studies? No, art history. Well, how about political science? Can't get a job. We could teach this in college, charge the kids a lot of money, and they'll have a successful future other than getting these degrees in worthlessness. I say we should write the book on propaganda, and it would be great in Harvard or Princeton or Yale, because they're the best at it. People ask me, you know, what's wrong with America? Those three words: Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and the other three, bullets, bombs, and banks. That's the business they're in.
Yeah, I saw this figure the other day from an economist, puts out this newsletter, a 25-page newsletter. His name's Joseph Meyer. You might have heard of him. And he said that something like 31.6% of people who are old enough to have graduated college, so I take it it's between 21 and 30, are living at home with their parents. And they have a nice, massive college tuition bill to pay back to go along with it. It's unbelievable. And then when you go to university, if you go to the College of Mathematics or the College of Engineering or something, that's one thing. When you go to university,
that's one thing.
You just get taught attitudes, and that's it. You get brainwashed. You get liberalized. It's weird.
Yeah, you get and neutered. I wrote this book in 1996, Trends 2000. National bestseller. It was in 17 different languages. I woke up, I read it, as I wrote it, you were waking up in the new millennium. Not at the very beginning, but into it. And one of the things I wrote about were the re-extended families. How young people wouldn't be leaving home because they wouldn't be able to find jobs that paid them enough. The trends were long in the making. It's the takeover of the United States and most of the world by the multinationals. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm also old enough to remember they had these quaint things when I was a young man. Stationery stores. That's right. One right down the street over here in Colonial Kingston on John Street. O'Reilly's. They're gone. We got Staples and Office Depot. And each little one of those privately owned stationery stores and office supply places, they had a wide variety of different products. No one carried virtually the same things. They had some of the same staples. Oop, shouldn't have used that word. But they had a variety. So we had entrepreneurs. But now, of course, we also have Walmart. So what? They put a lot of other people out of business. You could go into a huge self-storage unit and buy things for maybe a couple of pennies cheaper and get a lousy job working there. So we don't need any entrepreneurs. I could keep going down the list. When we used to have local pharmacies, and now we have Rite Aids and CVS's and Walgreens. Hey, you don't need them. You go to work in Slavelandia, you know your place, make a couple of bucks, you can't make ends meet, you have no future, but it's all concentrated in the hands of a few. It's a multinational takeover at every level. So that's what's really going on here. And when we're looking at these wars that are raging, the economy's going down, and all of these other side issues, it's getting the people's minds off the bigger issues. And so that's why propaganda is a great, great career to really entertain, because it gets your mind off the everyday problems of real life and focuses you on something that will never affect your life other than the time when they use it to ruin your life.
Well, let me ask you this, Gerald. In your opinion, first of all, I'd just like to talk to you about a lot of stuff. And this may seem a little, I don't know, a little like, what? But when did you figure out that you could figure out things in advance? Is it just, I mean, did your dad or something teach you critical thinking skills? Mine taught me how to think and how to find out answers to questions that I had. It usually started with go look it up. Look it up. In other words, begin your study. Go and research what other people have done. I mean, when did you have the, hey, I'm getting pretty good at this. I think I'll make this my business. When did that happen?
Well, I love what you just said about your father. Because one of the things that I do each morning, I meditate every morning. I want to stop the movie. You know, I read a lot of ugly stuff all day long. And I study a lot. So I meditate. And at the end of my meditation, I thank the ancestors. Beginning, of course, with my parents, my mother and father. May all their souls rest in peace. And I have a photo of my great-grandmother on my mother's side. That's the only great one I have. And I think of her face. And then I go down the list of grandparents on both sides, of course, my parents, and all the aunts and uncles, for all that they've given me. Because as I look at it, and again, I'm not telling people what to think or how to think, just the way I look at it, is all I am are pieces of their DNA. And I thank them for all that they've given me. And I mention all the aunts and uncles' names and the cousins that had departed from my parents, and just thinking of the strain, the DNA I came from, and all that they gave me. Well, going back to your dad's story, my father, may his soul rest in peace, I was off the charts. I ran away from kindergarten at 4.5 years old when I lived in the Bronx and crossed the Boston Post Road, which was the major artery between New York and Boston before they built the interstates. Man. They took me out. So I was, at that time, one of 5. So on Saturdays, my mother would ship me off with my father to go out in business. And I'm sitting along, and he's driving along, and I'm shooting him, and he look at me, and in the dialect from where we came from, the family in Italy, which is Vica Quenza, which is just up from Sorrento, between Sorrento and Pompeii. My father would look at me and say in the dialect, Papa wow. It's Papagallo, Papagallo's parrot. He'd say, Papa wow, stop repeating what everyone else is saying and think for yourself. And he'd go back to driving. And he'd say it just like that. And I heard that maybe about 5 or 6 times in my life as I was growing up. And I realized that before I opened my mouth, I better have the facts. Just like your dad said to you. Go look it up. So when did I learn about what I'm doing? I began my career, I used to run political campaigns at a graduate school in Westchester County, which was the richest county in the United States, back in 1971. And I was so good at it, they sent me up to Albany, and I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate at 23 years old. John, it was the worst job I ever had in my life. You know, as I said, I grew up in the Bronx, then we moved to Yonkers, we social climbed. And one of the things, again, another lesson from the ancestors and why I attribute everything I am to all that they've given and taught me. My mother, may her soul rest in peace, as a young kid, she looked at me one day and she said, I hate cowards. And I didn't even know what a coward was, but I heard that a couple of times and I found out. And I would never do anything to disgrace my mother. So here I am up in Albany. And I'm a young guy, you know, at 23 years old, you're hanging out in the back of the Senate chamber, BSing with my buddy. And a senator would walk in. And my friend would leave me, follow the senator like a little puppy dog, pull out his chair, help the senator sit down, and come back. He'd come back, and I said, and what's the matter, man? The cat can't sit down by himself. He needs some help. It was the worst job I ever had. All it was watching grown men grovel to suck their way up to the top. Yeah. So I was so good at this, I designed and instructed American Politics and Campaign Technology and taught it at St. John's University. I answered an ad in the New York Times. They were looking for a government affairs specialist, a trade association that does represent a section of the chemical industry. I moved to Chicago. I became a government affairs specialist. By 1973, I'm in D.C., living between D.C. and Chicago. I'll never forget, because it's very germane to what's going on today, when the 1973 oil crisis at the embargo happened. And I'm in D.C., and none of the chemical companies could get distillate. And this is important, because that was the only time that Saudi Arabia was with OPEC and the rest of them in saying, cut back on production and keep the embargo going. I say that because now the Saudis are saying the same thing. First time I've heard them say that since then, because when you look at oil prices, they're tanking and they're cutting production, and the reason being is because of a lack of demand, not because of the fracking. That's only a small part of it. Going back to the story. By the time I'm 28 years old, I'm staying at the Willard Hotel and putting on my meetings at the Hay Adams. And Jimmy Carter goes to spend New Year's Eve with the Shah and his wife. The Iranian crisis is breaking apart. I've been following this for years because my interest has always been in geopolitics and English. You know, I love poetry and writing and the arts. So when it started breaking down in Iran, I'm looking at this thing. I'm saying, this is for real. This thing isn't going to stop. Millions of people taking to the streets. Jimmy Carter and Rosalind, his wife, go to spend New Year's Eve with the Shah and his wife. They come back, and you know the ritual they used to do in those days, they get out of the helicopter, salute, go up to the microphones, and Jimmy Carter announces to the American public that the Shah is the island of stability in the Middle East. And at that moment, I became a political atheist. I'd been around long enough. There's pictures of me. I hired Ronald Reagan to speak to our group in 1976. That's a whole nother story. I have photos of me and him. I'd been around, and I'd seen enough. Anyway, the second thought that hit me was, what will be the implications of this? And I realized that gold and oil prices would go up. Inflation was already skyrocketing. Now they're talking about basically a war being launched against Iran. And I'm saying, what are the implications? So, not knowing anything, I started investing in gold and oil futures. I parlayed a $5,000 bet up to almost $750,000. I left my job and I began the Trends Research Institute. But just to make it clear, again, I'm a young guy, I'm half that in my mind. I ended up losing most of it. Yeah, I didn't know it that way. One morning I woke up and lost $250,000. Ready to slip my wrists. But I learned that if I could look at things for the way they are and not get caught up in the emotions of it, you can see the way they're going. But go back to the late 1970s with the Iranian crisis heating up. All it was hatred against Iran without anyone knowing what happened in 1973 when the CIA and the MI6 overthrew the democratically elected government of Mossadegh, because this Iranian guy that happened to be a university professor, he had the nerve to nationalize the Iranians' oil fields. How dare he take it out of the hands of Anglo-Iranian Oil, better known today as BP, and Standard Oil, better known today as ExxonMobil. So they overthrew the government, installed this brutal dictator. a brutal dictator, the Shah, that caused the conditions so that an Ayatollah could move in later, because when all else fails, things are breaking down. Whoever could put together a group to oppose the other group is the guy that wins, or woman that wins. So anyway, that's how it began. And I realized if I could look, and then I started thinking, you know, people are only looking at geopolitics. They're not looking at economics. They're not looking at social change. They're not looking at changes in the family. So I started broadening my scope and bringing, with the understanding, as Chief Seattle is alleged to have said, all things are connected like the blood which unites us all. So I started creating the globalnomics system, making connections between different fields. That's the long and the short of it.
That's pretty strong.
How could anyone of any courage and dignity look up to the commander-in-chief? How can they look up to the one before that one and the one before the one before? How can they look up to a Pelosi or a not-so-Feinstein? How can they look up to a McCain or a Graham? How can they look up to these heads of these agencies, one flunky after another, as they see that they're destroying the nation, a nation that used to be looked upon throughout the world as the land of opportunity? So that's the reason, by the way, that I stay here, because I love America and I couldn't be who I am anywhere else. As I said, my blood is Italian, but my heart, it's American. And that's why I bought 3 of the most historic buildings on the most historic 4 corners in the United States, and here in Colonial Kingston. It's the only corner where there's a pre-Revolutionary War stone building on each corner.
Yeah.
One 1774, 1750, and 1763. And from these corners, on May 2nd, 2015, we're launching OccupyPeace.us, based on the 3 words coming from our founding fathers, beginning with Washington. A real commander-in-chief, not one of these little boys, you know, drive pickup trucks and play golf. This is a real commander-in-chief that led the troops, that saw death and bloodshed. A real man. In his farewell address, no foreign entanglements. And that's what Occupy Peace is going to be based on. That's what we're launching it on. Bring home all the troops, honor thy founding fathers. There were wars going on then. The world was at war then. They knew better. They were educated scholars. And they knew that they had to put our resources and our energy into rebuilding America. And that's what Occupy Peace is based on. No foreign entanglements, rebuild America. So that's what we're going to be launching on May 2nd, 2015.
It's extraordinary. I think that's excellent.
Thank you.
Say, what do you make of the secession movement? Ron Paul said, "Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more of it. I think it's good that some of the states are threatening to leave the union. I can see the revolutionary spirit upside of that, and also, of course, the downside to it as well. I think there's already enough polarization now. I mean, what would actually happen if we split the country into 4 pieces? Then we'd be officially sanctioning ourselves to argue stridently with one another."
One of the things I mentioned about, you know, having an Occupy Peace movement, what happens with these protest movements and a lot of things, there are no takeaways. So people are, oh, right, you, and then what do you do? We're going to have takeaways. And it goes back to secession. Let we the people decide. And we're putting a whole program in place for people when they leave here to do A, B, and C. We haven't finished the plan yet. And by the way, there's an Occupy Peace website. If you're interested, anyone wants to go there, look at it. And we're open to any suggestions and ideas. Going back to secession. You want to go to war? Okay. Congress doesn't represent us. They represent the special interests that pay their way. Let we the people vote, because we're the ones that pay for it with our lives and our money. Number two, going back to secession. Go back to the founding fathers. Hey, Washington, we'll tell you how much money we'll give you. We, the people of, let's say, the eastern region, or the midsection, the south or the west. We'll tell you how much we'll give the FDA, EPA, CIA, NSA, FBI, and the Pentagon, plus, plus, plus. We'll decide, put it on the ballot. We're not stupid. Oh, yes, there were the ones that won't vote, so that's their choice. But let we, the people, decide. We, the people, don't even count in the equation anymore. We have a gang of 536. That's how many senators and congressmen there are out there telling us how to tie our shoes. One loser after another. No one. They couldn't lead me across the street. And as I said, a commander-in-chief, the only thing that he has to show for 6 years in office, and again, only as I see it, remembering my father's motto, think for yourself, is nothing but after coming to office, a pack of lies, a long string of failures, and a bad attitude. And when Ron Paul talked about secession, he mentioned the Second Vermont Republic. That was started by my dear friend Thomas Naylor, who had contacted me back in 2002. Thomas Naylor, by the way, was a professor emeritus at Duke University in economics. This guy was over in the Soviet Union at a time when, and doing government work. A genius and one of the kindest men I've ever met in my life. May his soul rest in peace. He passed away in December 2012, and I have to tell you, his loss was one of the greatest losses of my life. And I'm putting that in the category of the loved ones I lost in my family. It took me months and months to get over every time mentioning his name and not breaking down in tears. And when he called me, John B. Wells, and he told me about, Gerald Celente, I've heard about, blah, blah, blah. He told me about secession. I said, listen, I'm not for this. He said, listen, I'm up here in Vermont. Where can we meet? I was in Rhinebeck, New York at the time. Let's go meet in Great Barrington. We met in Great Barrington. I see this guy walking down the street. And bing, it hits me in my flashes. I said, this is Mr. Smith's gone to Washington. Jane, this guy could have played Fonda. He was that kind of guy. He was a real gentleman, kind spirit. And he talked me into secession movements. He not talked me into, he laid out the plans. The only way I see our future of our United States is to take the power away from 536, who only represent special interests, and put it back into the states of the regions. Let we, the people, decide. That's what this country was founded upon, and that's gone. So I believe that, yes, secessionism, populism, call it what you like, that's the future.
All right. What are your thoughts on, it's just so weird out there. I think the key to keeping the chaos rolling is just to continue to infuse our heads with confusion. I was saying yesterday that because we can access all this information so easily now, we tend to think that because we all know about something, then the problem that we're talking about, whatever it is, must be as widespread as the awareness of it. And that's just not necessarily the case unless we cause that to happen through our awareness of it. So here we have all this, it's like Israel supporting al-Nusra in Aleppo, and now, the Russian separatists in Ukraine, and Russia is sending troops in, and it's a banker deal. It's actually the CIA that's trying to do that whole democracy movement over there. I mean, How do you sort this out, or do you do it by just looking at an overall trend, and then by being able to identify the trend, then you can go back and identify the individual components with a high degree of accuracy? I mean, what do you make of all this? It looked like, well, okay, first we wanted to take the guns, that didn't work. Next we tried to flood the border, that didn't work. Next we tried to scare everybody to death with ISIS, and that didn't work. And then nuclear war with Russia, well, that's not working very well either. So now maybe a pandemic, maybe that'll work. I mean, to me, this is just stupid. I hate it.
It is stupid. And we have stupid people leading us. And no one wants to call a spade a spade. Look at Congress. Look at the leaders of our country and look around the world. How about that little guy over there in England, Cameron? Now, there's a real leader for you. And the one before him and the one before him, yeah. B.S. Blair, you remember him, the guy that lied us into the war. Another guy with a bad attitude. Take a trip over there to France. Yeah, you remember Sarkozy, the guy that championed the destruction of Libya. We got to get that Gaddafi. And then the little boy that followed him, Hollande. We got to get those bad militants over there in Mali. What was that, French Indochina at one time, if my memory ain't. Yeah, you're losing at home, let's go abroad. Go around the world. One psychopath and sociopath after another. And the people still hail to the chief and bow to the queen. Saying that, and you're talking about all the information we have. Go back to the Revolution of the United States. It was only a handful. And from the knowledge that I have, and I'll be corrected, it's only, and I'm not saying this was the truth, but from the information that I've read, about 40% of the people in America were against the revolution. And only a small part really got it going. Take current events, form future trends. Look what's going on in Hong Kong. You're seeing the massive demonstrations. They can't get these people off the streets. Who was it started by? A 17-year-old kid is the leader of this thing that got it going back to the power of the social media, using it in an element that doesn't distort facts in the sense that of conspiracy theories, special agendas, or whatever, but bringing people together for a common cause. It's working. Where will it go? I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing. You can never get away with this in the United States. They would have been had our heads bashed open a long time ago. And then, again, the power of one person, agree or disagree. People blame a lot of what's going on in Israel for Zionism. Who's the father of Zionism? Theodor Herzl. Where was he born? In Pest. That became Budapest. Love him, hate him, agree, disagree, not the issue. One person made a difference. One person is making a difference in Hong Kong. When the people, to me, again, the way I see it, when people find the courage, the dignity, the self-respect, the integrity, and the passion within, that's when we will see the positive moral, spiritual, and intellectual revolution that'll take us to greater heights and bring us to a much, much brighter future.
Let's talk about money. Want to?
Sure.
Gold just went below 1,200 spot price, 1,100 and something. Silver's down in, I think, $16 and something cents. And, of course, much like the 0% interest, 5 minutes out of bankruptcy, 0% interest, no income verification. Get a mortgage now. It's great. Interest rates are low. When I heard all that going on for a couple of years over the radio particularly, I thought, oh, boy, this is a balloon that's being inflated and it's going to go pop. And it did. And I'm just wondering, is that what's happening with metals? What do you see happening with metals? Is it a good idea to buy metals?